fixing them will take a long time. So we require urgent measures to address the most pressing needs, particularly high levels of unemployment among our youth. The NDP as a guiding document didn't only just identify the problems, but is a document of hope, because it went on to assert that South Africa has the potential and the capacity to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality in the next 2 years as we march towards 2030. So it is in that context that we in the sector, which is responsible for creation of the inclusive information society, we have to work with you in realizing this goal. What was critical in the NDP, that it also realized that the hindrance to the creation of this information society was the high cost of domestic broadband internet connectivity. To stimulate growth and employment, he called upon us to, among others, to improve our skill base, improve our ICT infrastructure, and reduce the regulatory burden in the sectors where the private sector is a main investor, such as our own ICT infrastructure, with the aim of achieving greater capacity and lowering the prices. With that background, we have been fortunate to be given the opportunity and responsibility to lead the new Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services, tasked with the development of the ICT sector, particularly access to affordable broadband, the finalization of our e-strategy, the modernization of our postal sector, and the extension of the financial services to unbanked and underserviced through the corporatization of the Postals. The new institutions which now fall under this department include Centec, the E-Skills Institute, USASA, Telcom, Broadband Infraco, CETA, and ZADNA. Without undoing of the convergence, the broadcasting has been moved to the new Department of Communications. While the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa is administratively under that department, functionally it accounts to both departments. I think the clarity will be made by the Gazette, which we probably issued this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, our focus as government, as President Zuma stated in his State of the Nation address, is this radical socio-economic transformation, which must result in accelerated growth and development and creation of decent work opportunities. Coming to some of the issues pertaining to our sector, let me start with the post office. I understand the post office is part of your industry. We were very pleased that we're meeting just a week when we have just resolved the strike in the post office. After lengthy discussions and with problems of governance, we released the board and appointed administrator. Within few days, the administrator has managed to identify the critical problems to ensure that the post office really delivers. I remember we were receiving numerous calls from the institutions of learning, from business who were severely affected by the impact of this strike. And we call upon you to continue to use the post office as we continue to modernize it. Our real problem in the post office is to identify new management who will be able to take this vision which has been set up by government. Because the post office has got the widest footprint in our society. At the same time, as we have said, we have to continue to increase the banking services to the rural areas, to the marginalized and unbanked. This is not in competition with the commercial banks, because this is a segment which is under service at the moment. We are in the process of doing the necessary requirements which are required by the Reserve Bank so that we can move on towards the corporatization of this post bank. Coming to the broadband, as you all are aware, last year December we finalized our broadband policy, South Africa Connect, with a very clear implementation plan. This plan calls upon us to coordinate our effort and minimize duplications on the infrastructure, remove the regulatory burdens in investing in this infrastructure, and close the gaps, and focus on closing the gaps. The gaps in the broadband, they occur in all the variation and segment of this broadband. Of course, we thank the private sector for partnering with us in investing in the sea cables. We thank the partnering which is occurring in putting the backhaul infrastructure. But the most critical element is to close the gaps, particularly the urban-rural divide. The most critical element is also to create the competition at the last mile where we offer services to the people. Because we finalized this plan very late, we couldn't meet the required planning of government, which is the 3-year planning. But we started with at least 1-year plan, and we finalized it. This phase 1 of the implementation focused on digital development program, and we couldn't even wait for the National Treasury to start allocating the funds next year because infrastructure requires planning. So the planning is at an advanced stage. We've finalized the first phase of the business proposal to Treasury, and we'll prioritize the rollout of the broadband infrastructure in the 8 districts where the National Health Insurance program is being piloted. But the focus will not be limited to health facilities. We will be prioritizing the connection of 580 clinics, 4,444 schools, 182 police stations, and 572 other government offices in the year 2015 to 2016. As the chair of the Strategic Integrated Project for Infrastructure Project, SIP15, I am driving the coordination of the infrastructure expansion program to create this enabling environment for business to partner with government in rolling the infrastructure and building our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, from the government side, because we have all these entities which are involved in the infrastructure, the ICTs, like CETA, we're beginning the process of rationalization of these state-owned entities. At the same time, while we're coordinating the government departments in the investment of this infrastructure, we are planning to engage the private sector to really work with us to identify the niche areas where they can invest. Quite clearly, I've also been asked to also speak about some of the regulatory changes for the future. There is a proposal in the policy which drafted this group in the policy review, which they've published for comment, that we must start thinking about moving away from competition on infrastructure to competition on services. We must start thinking about how we can best share the infrastructure instead of just duplicating this investment, because investment in this infrastructure is very expensive and continuously requires upgrade of technology in order to keep in line with the international trends. So these are the options which are out there where we really would like to engage you on these open access networks. The other aspects of this, as we've said, it involves how do we deal then with the creation of the content which is going to run through this infrastructure. That's where we need the creativity of the South African business. We need to create the opportunities for the small sector to be able to enter into this environment. Maybe just to say, President spoke about a growth rate of at least 5% by 2019. Our sector, the ICT, the energy, the transport infrastructure, and the water, have to bear the largest burden of this growth. So our task is not to hinder the growth in the industry, but is to work with you to see which areas we can invest. Because it's only through the investment of the private sector that we can meaningfully deal with the challenges we face in employment creation and other problems we've identified. So the issue of really looking at the electronic industry, the localization of these instruments we're going to be using to use this ICT, whether it's the television, the tablets, the phones, and so on, is very critical for us. South Africa remains the only country which has got real potential of localizing and the manufacturing sector and expanding the manufacturing sector and exports, as NPP calls us upon us, that we must focus on investment in the productive sector so that we can increase our exports, particularly to Africa, in the African continent. The content, whether the application is going to be key. But to us, the issue of skills, as Mandela, in order to create that information society, we need the massification of these skills in our society, both for business and ordinary South Africans, so that they can participate in this information revolution. We urge business to really offer the learnerships, the bursaries in this sector. We also urge the business sector to really sponsor the high-end skills, the engineers, which would be so much required in this sector. Coming to the issue of how far are we with the cybersecurity policy, you remember that 2 years ago we adopted the framework for the cybersecurity for South Africa. We then committed to work with different sectors of the society to increase the awareness, to increase the cooperation and collaboration in dealing with this massive risk. We as a department were specifically tasked to create the hub where all of us can share the information about threats and how we address these threats. So where we can also share the information about the impact of cybercrime and the best ways we can have our police and the law enforcement agencies reduce these crimes in our society. But at the same time, the department, we have to increase the general awareness because internet is so important for the development of South African society. But at the same time, we have to ensure that those who are using these technologies can have the confidence that their privacy and their critical information is protected at all times. We are pushing forward with this hub, and we hope that by March next year, we'll have an official launch where we'll be sitting with our business, where we'll be sitting with sectors of civil society and having a working hub to address these challenges. I'm told, Project Director Chairperson, that the critical success of this is going to be how we harness the high-end skills in dealing with cybercrime, cyberterrorism, and all these other ills which are associated with it. But at the same time, like we said, we have to encourage our South Africans to utilize the IC skills for their development, to stimulate their businesses, to grow their businesses, and also to cut the rural-urban divide. On the regulatory part, there are other issues we are still considering. The NDP clearly says we must look at the issue of cost and access of the ICTs. We welcome the collaboration in the industry in really working to reduce the cost. We have seen the termination rates, but we hope that we will now move with speed to reducing the cost which directly affect the citizens. We have noticed for those who are operating in the cell phone and mobile environment that there have been some attempts on the contracts, but we say we must also move, on the prepaid, we must also move to other segments of this end. So we are really saying the key to this is going to be the transparency to how we do these prices. I don't want to be misquoted. There is no business which go to business without a profit motive. Every business must make profit. If you can't make profits, we are in the wrong area. So that's how business will grow, if they've got the prospect of making profits. But while we're saying at the same time, while we are looking at this profit motive, we must also address the reality of South Africa, of ensuring that these services are really affordable to the majority of our people. On the ICT review, we have released about a week or two ago this paper, which is looking at how we see the industry in the future. We really want your input. We have heard the calls that the time frames which you have set are a little bit too short, even from the panel members who were putting this thing. I was very discouraged that first people to complain with the panel members. We will consider that because it is critical that we just don't steamroll this policy. It is very important for the structure and the survival of the ICT sector in South Africa. So but we encourage you, as you go on holiday, please download these things, keep in your cell phones, read it, send us input, even if they are initial input, before you send us your final input next year. So we'll consider extending the period instead of just steamrolling, but we encourage you to work on it and give your input during this festive season. Ladies and gentlemen, I thought I should just speak on these things. I know there are many things you would like to ask me questions. I believe in interaction with you.